عندي 106 سنين 106 سنين الحمد لله.
Welcome to Meet Us on the Abraham Path. I'm Anissa Mehdi, Executive Director of the Abraham Path Initiative. We are glad to see so many of you again, and we want to offer special appreciation to those of you who are donors to our not-for-profit, you individual donors, the foundation donors that have joined us today. Thank you so very much. We also want to welcome our first-time members. Some of you have joined us through your connection to the Harvard Divinity School, which is co-hosting today's webinar. And we hope that this will be the first of many shared learning experiences among us. Well, we are all here to hear from Vivien Sansour, who I had the pleasure of meeting at lunch in New York City, back when you could have lunch in New York City. And she's been on my mind ever since. You're about to find out why. Here to introduce Vivien Sansour is Dr. Diane Moore. She's faculty director of the Religion and Public Life program at Harvard's Divinity School. Dr. Moore is a lecturer in religion, conflict, and peace, and a senior fellow at the Divinity School's Center for the Study of World Religions. Welcome, Diane. It's been a real pleasure working with your team to create today's event.
Thank you so much, and it is my great honor to introduce our speaker for today, Vivien Sansour. Vivien is currently serving as a fellow in the Religion, Conflict, and Peace Initiative at Harvard University. She's trained in the field of anthropology, and she worked with farmers worldwide on issues relating to agriculture and independence, where she wrote about and photographed rural life and practices. In 2014, she founded the Palestine Heirloom Seed Library, where she works with farmers to propagate and recover threatened heirloom varieties and creates local and international public awareness campaigns to educate people about Palestinian agricultural heritage and its rich biodiversity. She's working on bringing back threatened varieties, quote, back to the dinner table to become part of the living culture rather than a relic of the past. She's a public speaker, a wonderful one, as you'll soon learn. She's also presented her work as an artist and independent scholar, conservationist in several venues, locally and globally, including SALT Art Center in Istanbul, Georgetown University, Chicago Architectural Biennial, and Columbia University. Her fellowship project at the Religion, Conflict, and Peace Initiative is to capture that work in an autobiographical book that weaves stories and sketches of nature, struggle, womanhood, triumph, and social change. It has been such an incredible honor for us at the Religion and Public Life program to have the opportunity to work with Vivien this year, and we will again continue our work with her next year. And I can say from personal experience that she is a trailblazer, and that she combines her perseverance, her courage, and her stellar imagination to envision and to work toward a just world at peace. So I'm excited to hear you again, Vivien, and I'll turn it over to you now.
Hi, thank you so much, Anissa, for this invitation, and thank you so much, Diane, for such a kind and generous introduction. I don't know how to speak now after all of this, but it's also been an honor for me to be part of the Harvard cohort, even though I am, as many have heard me say, a proud PhD dropout. I've been finding a lot of support and imagination also with folks in academia at Harvard, which has been nice to be with folks who can also imagine things of how we can bridge these two worlds together. but also with the Abraham Path, because I actually witnessed the Abraham Path in its nascent years. It was a very small initiative 10 years ago, where I remember Stephen, one of the first people who was working on hikes, and I had the honor to actually visit a lot of these hike trails and a lot of these communities where I wrote a few stories for the Abraham Path. And so I got to also see how amazing it is to also walk and learn so much about what the walking offers, such an opportunity to learn about other people and about our world. And so this is not very far from what I will speak about today, I guess, which is that I have been walking and I have been flying like most of our plants and seeds, basically, because the only way a plant can travel is as seed, and it gets eaten by a bird. It gets flown somewhere and it gets pooped, and then you have a tree somewhere and it feeds other people, and it is really a continuous circle of life, of literally life, because death doesn't exist in the natural world as we understand it.
Yeah. Vivien, let's talk for just a minute about the journeying that you've done, the walking and the flying. We're going to be getting into that figurative sense of seeking, exploring the inner self and the juicy stuff that we'll talk about today. But literally, you alluded to journeying, and literally you were born in Palestine, the area we call the West Bank. You're living in Los Angeles right now, and you've been back and forth any number of times. I'm wondering what it is that you miss the most about the Palestinian countryside, with all that you've seen and the places you've been.
I'm very homesick, so I miss the tenderness. I miss the tenderness that is demonstrated in the landscape often, and I miss also the tenderness that literally the people, the community show. Even you don't have to like everybody, but everybody extends a part of their heart to you. And I often miss that when I leave it, because actually my colleague and friend Hudson is watching today. And
He's the one who introduced us, actually.
Yeah, he introduced us. Hudson is magical. And we often spend time, working in the mountain together, and we make a cup of tea and we eat. Like, our friends are actually the plants, the rocks, and then we make a little fire, and then we're having tea, and and the world disappears. All of the pain of the world disappears also, because you're actually in the real world, which is the world of diversity, the world of plant, the world of tenderness, which is kind of the essence of the work that we're trying to do, which is to expand the spaces of tenderness in the world. I mean, it's not like we don't understand that the world is harsh and cruel in so many ways, and we witness it ourselves. But we find so many answers in nature, and that requires also walking and sometimes flying for birds.
Vivien, I have another question that is related to that, which is, often when I talk about the region from which you come, the region from which my father comes, he's from Iraq, I call it Southwest Asia. We have a map to show our viewers here, our audience members, where Southwest Asia is. Now, typically, people look at that and they say, oh, that's the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And I argue that the Middle East is a political construct. It's not a place. I'd love to hear your thoughts on those dual namings of this region that we both love, that's filled with nature, that's filled with hospitality. But when we say the Middle East, there's a different image often that comes to people's minds.
Yeah, I obviously find, middle to whom? Middle to where, depends on where you're standing, right? So I don't see the world in these political maps. So I don't have a relationship to the word Middle East. And I often struggle when people say, oh, you're from the Middle East. Well, because I don't know what that means in their mind. Obviously, it means a lot of things that have been constructed by media, by, how education, what people call education. But for me, sorry, question is, what is the term to me, or was
Well, yeah, what do you think of that terminology? Because often reality is created by our words.
Yeah,
either nature or our words.
It's comical, just like many terminologies in our dominant world, like extremely comical. Like, we refer to a lot of things that I don't identify with. For me, even, when I think of where I come from, like where my people come from, I can think about, okay, that area that you referred to as the Middle East, but also a lot of what we eat and a lot of our heritage comes from Africa. I mean, we're separated by a tiny road, basically, from Africa. And so I think a lot of also the foods we eat have been domesticated from Africa. Mlokhiyeh, which is a plant that everybody in the Middle East loves, and all of that is actually an African plant. Okra, which we also all love and like to talk about and eat and consider it, our national food. Well, it actually comes from Africa. So I guess I let the world say whatever the world wants to say, and in the meantime, I create my own creations and extend them to others and hope that people join me. So I actually feel a belonging to the whole world, and I find, the term Middle East, fine, if that's what you're gonna use, you can use it, but I understand it's colonial history as well. And it's very important when we use these words to also understand, like, that's why I said it's middle to whom. And it's all a matter of perspective. We can also say we're the middle of the world. I think Mexico is the center of the world, but that's from my perspective.
Well, Vivien, I just wanted to turn to our audience for a moment and say, we want you to be part of this conversation with Vivien. Please note that in your control panel, there's a Q&A section, and we'd love for you to put your questions in there, and then I'll get as many questions as possible to Vivien. So we're also already having people asking about the Palestinian Heirloom Seed Library.
For me, the Seed Library has been a work that is not separate from what we just talked about. And it's really been a work of mostly grief, actually. People say, oh, I trained in the field of anthropology. I feel like many people, I'm trained in the field of grief and saying goodbye. It started as my personal grief, but then I got to learn about the grief of the world as we're losing our bioheritage. We're losing, in the last century, we've lost 70% of our biological diversity, and how diversity is so important for our survival. The fact that you eat a banana and you take it for granted, the truth is bananas are a threatened species. Can you imagine your life without having bananas? And that is not so far in the imagination. But that is something that, we were not so unfamiliar with as Palestinians, for example, where the things we love, I shared with you earlier about this mountain that Hudson and I go to and work in. Well, we planted seeds in it this year, and we don't know if we're going to get to harvest them. We're being threatened constantly by settler expansion. So my work with seeds is really about processing this loss and this grief, and also rebelling against it by trying to transform it and salvage whatever is left of it, and transform it into something hopefully beautiful and life-giving, not just to our community, but to the world, as we try to make new stories that can help us make sense of this brutal world. So I share this sketch because this is one of the stories that actually inspired the essence of everything I'm doing. And it's the story of Ahmed, and she's a woman from the Haitian refugee camp who I met 15 years ago. But I just want to say that, you know, I want to acknowledge all the women also that I watched before me, including my own mother, my grandmother, and all the women that are farming in the fields today, or cooking or whatever, who have also inspired so much of this work. So what I'm doing is really just a continuation. I am, in a lot of ways, their seed. And in Arabic, we often refer to your children as zarri'a. Zarri'a means plant, but we say, oh, this is your zarri'a. It's like, these are your kids. So I guess I am the zarri'a of my grandparents, particularly my maternal grandmother, who was a great farmer, but my paternal grandmother, who was a fantastic storyteller. So I aspire to hopefully embody that. But Ahmed is one of the many women that I've met who really changed the way I think about the world. And I went to meet Ahmed 15 years ago with a lawyer from England who was going to record her testimony after her house in Dheisheh was destroyed. Their house was completely demolished by the Israeli army, and they were now living in their chicken coop. So when we went to visit her, and her son was killed in an army invasion. So she was living in the chicken coop of her family with her daughter-in-law and her granddaughters and her husband. And we were outside, sitting outside this chicken coop with a little fire. It was actually around this time in March, and she kept bringing, you know, tea and these delicious spinach pies in the middle of, while she's recounting her grief about what had just happened. You know, they just built this house, it's destroyed, and all of that. And so I was very distracted by these delicious leaves that she kept bringing out, because they really tasted like home to me. And I said, Ahmed, where is all this coming from? And she took my hand and took me to the back of the chicken coop. And on the ruins of her home, she had started a home garden. And that was so diverse and so full of greens that she was serving us. So from her wound, from her destroyed life, she created life and shared life with us. And so I became really not just fascinated, but also inspired that if Ahmed can do this, you know, none of us have any excuses to say we can't do something. And so I became fascinated with seeds along the years, also about, you know, especially that seeds really, you know, create this autonomy. Basically, they give power. When you can feed yourself your own foods, you are an autonomous being, which means you can think for yourself, you can make decisions for yourself. A lot of people, especially in our neoliberal world, are always telling, you know, a lot of people talk about their dreams, but then they say, oh, but I can't, I have student loans. Oh, I can't. I mean, I was one of those people. And I often have to check with myself when I'm lying to myself about the reasons I can't do something. But we're so bogged down by debts, and we don't have autonomy, no matter where we are. And so for me, seeds offered a window into this freedom that we have been deprived of. So they were a platform. And if you see, these are seeds of our heirloom spinach, and it's unlike the conventional spinach. It's very spiky. So you look at it and it's like you're going into the galaxies. And so it does excite our imagination to also say, you know, there are worlds beyond the little world I'm seeing right now. And so a lot of the story with the seed library started by me trying to, make sense of the world I live in, particularly that when I became an immigrant in the United States, a lot of people would say, "Oh, you're from Palestine? That doesn't exist." And so I heard so much the word that I don't exist, which kind of emphasized a lot of the same messages that I also got as a child, living under colonial power also, that we are worth nothing, we don't even exist, we're not important. Combined with also being a woman, a young girl, that's also the same message always. So but I couldn't believe it. Like, it didn't make sense to me. How can I not exist when my ancestors developed seeds that live in the earth with no irrigation? Like, that's just my ancestors are magicians. What are you saying that I don't exist? They fed the world. And so I started looking for seeds of first the watermelon that's called jaddui. And this watermelon is, a lot of people in the north talk about it a lot. They refer to it as one of the most important crops that they've ever had in the Jenin Valley. A lot of people even have the word jaddui in their name. This lovely man here, his name is Jaddui. Like, this is his last name. So how can we not exist? Like, what kind of myth has the world been fed when we carry this biological seed heritage in our names, in the way we eat, in the way we live? This is I don't want to take up too much time, but this is a story of how I was looking for these seeds, and I found them in someone's drawer. And then I started working with farmers to put these seeds in the ground, and then to also share it with the world. And then I started to have lots of cups of coffee and tea with a lot of elders that I would look for. Often I would go to villages where I don't know anyone. I may start a conversation with a shepherd who would take me to his grandmother. His grandmother would take me to another mother who would tell me about, they take out these real seed libraries, not my seed library. This is the real seed library, which is old chocolate tin boxes full of human heritage. It's not just Palestinian. When you understand that we developed seeds that are basically seeds that we need today for our future, for the survival of the planet. We're talking about seeds that, as we say, many farmers say, these seeds know the soil, meaning that we as human species have co-evolved with our nature, and these seeds are the product of this co-evolution, this co-creation, and that's why they're able to survive without irrigation. Ba'li seeds, which refer to the Canaanite deity of fertility. So imagine you go back thousands of years and we still use this word today. This is not something from thousands of years that we talk about as if like, oh, no longer. We still use this practice today. So the disappearance of each seed meant the disappearance of this knowledge that has kept us alive for millennia.
Vivien, this heirloom spinach seed that you showed us before, is that also a word that's carried on for many years? And what is it called?
It's just called sabanich, which means spinach. There's no fancy word for that one. But it is this one, the one I showed you, we plant it in the winter and we don't have to irrigate it as well. It just grows off of the rain. Obviously, today with climate change, we're experiencing a lot of changes. So we're having to adjust to new ways. So that's why it's very important that today, as whether we're farmers, we're thinkers, we're writers, we're scientists, we have to work together to figure out, okay, how are we going to use the knowledge of the past, use the science of today to figure out how to face this global crisis we are facing.
Yeah. which we face together. It's not that, it's just like the
We fit
coronavirus.
together
It knows
in
no
different ways,
borders.
though, Anissa. Sadly, I always used to say, we're not all on this boat together. I mean, I say we are on the boat together. It's just some people are in first class, and so they will be able to survive a little bit longer. They'll be able to buy water, they'll be able to turn on their ACs. But in the end, you are absolutely right. The ship will sink with all of us unless we dare to imagine new creative ways for the future. This is the Haj Hamoudeh. He is from the south part of the West Bank. And I actually visited the Haj Hamoudeh. He's 104 years old. He's
Wow.
one of the many people that I had the honor to meet. But Haj Hamoudeh, it's funny, his name is Haj Hamoudeh, and Hamoudeh is actually a nickname we use for little boys. But his name is Haj Hamoudeh, and he's 104. So you can imagine this man has witnessed a century-long, a little over, of human change, of cultural change, of political change. And I went to him, of course, in my little, arrogant young person attitude of, I am going to ask him because I want to get the story of his story. I want to learn about, I'm still looking for a weed that's called Kaf al-Rahman, which is a very beautiful name. It means the palm of the merciful. But this also tells you how the names, you mentioned names, Anissa, names are not something so random. People understood when you refer to wheat as the palm of the merciful, you understand that the food we have today is the mercy of the divine. The fact that we even have the food we have today, you give it a, I love in Arabic, we never throw away bread. Like you will never find bread in the trash can. I mean, people trash everything, but bread, they will hang it in a little bag somewhere, because people understand the value of having wheat and having food, because the wheat we have today is the product of basically millennia of imagination and development and hard work that created the food we have today. But what I wanted to say about Haj Hamoudeh is, when I was asking him all these questions about himself, he challenged me and said, you're not here looking for wheat. You're here to looking for yourself. And I was really dumbfounded, because no one's ever at that until then, like,
Challenged you so
challenged
directly.
me this much. But it really helped me understand that is true. Like, my journey with looking for seeds is the journey of trying to also again rebel and dispel the lies that I was worth nothing, whether it's because I'm Palestinian, whether it's because I'm a woman, whether it's because I'm an immigrant. There's so many lies that we can dispel through the beauty of nature and seeds. When we understand who we are, it gives us so much power. And so when I tell these stories about, for example, how wheat was developed in Iraq, in Palestine, in Syria, when young people get to understand that their ancestors actually gave the world cookies and cake, it shifts the way they sit, it shifts the way they talk. So when we talk about liberation, what does liberation mean? Is it just that you have a passport and you can travel, or is it that you know who you are and you actually love and celebrate it, and you celebrate it so much that you continue in this heritage of generosity with sharing it with the rest of humanity? And this is an example here, for example, of one of my favorite crops, but also one of my favorite people, Imsami. She's from the village of Irtas. And you can see she does grow broccoli, which is a newer variety crop that people are using in Palestine. But she also still grows the Baladi Zahra, the heirloom cauliflower. And I love the story of this cauliflower because it also reminds us that we are all seeds. I mean, this cauliflower sits in the ground literally for 9 months, just like a child. And also how we must practice respect also when we eat, that we must wait for things. We don't have to have everything all the time. So this cauliflower is so revered. So in February, when she comes to life, people become really excited. You see all the trucks everywhere. This bouquet is sitting there for sale. It's very sweet. I have a challenge when I'm driving in the villages. I end up buying 3 of them because I eat a whole one by myself just on the way home. But one of the beautiful things about this, again, this relationship between plant, crop, food, and human is, for example, these traditions, such as this one, where this is an auction, a cauliflower auction. It's like a beauty pageant in the Jordan Valley. So these farmers come and they bring their cauliflowers, and they conduct this auction of kind of the farmer gets to say what the price for their beautiful cauliflower is. And this is a very important tradition that sadly is being challenged by a lot of the modern day organization of government because it threatens also the power of corporations to be the ones who have monopoly
the price.
Prices.
Yeah. So they have a truck full of cauliflower, and then they say, for this load, you're gonna, who'll give me, and he rattles off a price, who'll give me.
I mean, literally, if you have ever been to an art auction, it's like they put their art, which is their cauliflower, and they say, these are my cauliflowers, I'm selling for whatever. They may weigh it, and then people will start screaming, yelling, 100, 200, stuff like that. It's a really, really beautiful, very beautiful and meaningful tradition, because it is about, farmers being able to have autonomy over their production, autonomy over their seed, and autonomy over their economic life, and thus autonomy over how they organize their lives. And so this is, as communities, when we talk about liberation and freedom, this is the essence of it. Obviously, in our case, we are being deprived of access to land, which is a major conversation that we actually must have in order for us to really talk about liberation. It's not enough to have beautiful slogans. This is an image of Abu Samra, the wheat, the heirloom wheat that I was telling you. Oh, I don't know if I told you about, but it's one of the many heirloom wheats that we have, that were developed in Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent. You can say that we are the center of diversity of wheat, which means that wheat and barley were developed in our region. And so again, it took the imagination of someone sitting somewhere seeing this wild grass to keep selecting for us to have this wheat. But I will share a little bit about this wheat, because the journey, when I first saw this wheat, I felt madly in love. I was like, what is this? It has black whiskers. It's so full. And when it's green, it's also gorgeous. So, and the farmer said, oh, this is Haiti, nobody wants it. And he proceeded to show me the other wheat that he was growing. And I was like, but wait, what is this? And so we started to talk about it. And I learned also, again, it grows with no irrigation. It grows in semi-desert areas. So imagine, it can really live on a lot of thirst. And in Palestine,
so Vivien,
yes.
So heirloom really means it's been there for a long, long time and developed naturally in the space, in the land, in the farm. So it's adapted itself to its
Well,
environment.
with human intervention, natural human intervention. So when we talk about breeding and selection, the wheat we have today wasn't this. It used to be a wild natural grass. You know, it's still natural. It was a wild grass, but it took somebody to select it, to take this wild little grass. So it probably had little maybe seeds, and then they kept growing it, and over the years they kept practicing science, basically observation and look, you know, and experimentation and science and imagination, obviously, to say maybe it will become something we grind and we make into bread. And so over, imagine, years and years, we got this. And then people, since it worked and they made bread with it, they started passing it down to their children to their children. And that's why the disappearance of these varieties is so dangerous. A, they are so adaptive to their environments. B, they actually don't require the use of so many resources, because they just grow in there, they know their microclimates. And they also are disease resistant, many of them. And we need them, we need this diversity in order to keep so many others alive. Like, you know, this is how we, you know, people, when, for example, the potato famine happened in Ireland, because potatoes don't actually come from Ireland. And they were growing, you know, one kind of potato. And so when a disease hit the potato in Ireland, they were at risk of not having any more potatoes. So they had to go back to Peru, to Ecuador, to find the many diverse varieties of potatoes, to find the potato that has the gene that resists the disease. So that's why we need more and more of the things that our ancestors developed and passed down to us, because the more we lose, the more we risk actually famines, literally.
And so, for example, in your seed library, you collect these seeds from this particular beautiful, I agree with you, it's a beautiful mustachioed wheat, and other kinds of wheat that have been around for a long time.
I will say that I'm learning more about what my work actually is about. I am not an agronomist. What I am is I'm someone who is, I guess, on a healing journey, and in the process, plants for me work as great storytellers, and they help me understand my own story, but they also help me make new stories that can kind of help us forward. And of course, I take wisdom from farmers and agronomists who actually know more about this stuff than I do. But of course, I developed a lot of knowledge throughout, you know, more than a decade of being with this stuff. But what I want to say about this wheat in particular, when I got to learn about it and people would say to me, oh my God, oh, you're talking about Abu Samra, and they would refer to it as Abu Samra, which literally in Arabic is a way to flirt with someone or to say dark and handsome. And a lot of people say, oh my God, you're talking about Abu Samra, it tastes like cake. Or a lot of women talked about how kneading Abu Samra was just so nice and they really enjoyed it. And actually, when we got to make it and eat it, it did truly taste like cake. I mean, it was just very filling. It was quite delicious. But then I started to work with farmers to grow it again. And one of the farmers, this is Khaldun in an area south of Bethlehem. And in the beginning, he was like, you know, okay, I will plant some, but I really, you know, I really, you know, have no use for it. I'm doing it for you. Okay. And then afterwards, he called me and he said, I'm going to send the sheep to graze it. Nobody wants it. Nobody knows what it is. You know, if you don't pay me, I'm not going to, it's very labor intensive also. I'm going to just send the sheep to graze it. And so, of course, I paid him. I was like, please don't do that. But then I started to think of like, well, what's the point? You know, you convince a farmer to do it. The farmers love these varieties. It's just that they also need to make a living. So how do we make it possible for people to learn about their story, but also want it? So I collaborated with a local musician. His name is Zaid Hilal, and we have a song out. You can Google it if you like. It's called Abu Samra by Zaid Hilal. He's a young and up and coming artist, and so he would perform when we used to perform, and he would mention the story. But so young people started to want this variety, and so they would call, ask for it. Now we have it in seed packets, you know, because people want it. They want to taste their history, right? This is my great grandmother, Jamile, and this is my father. And I was saying, you know, I am the seed of my grandmothers. But for the sake of time, I will just conclude by saying that, you know, from that sort of sprouted the seed library, and the seed library is just a place we meet, but actually the actual seeds live in the fields, which is where they should live. And while, you know, this is a small attempt at salvaging something, there's just still a whole lot of work to do. And one of the main things that we're focusing on this year is trying to save some of the last remaining terraces in our town. And if people are interested in actually learning more about that or supporting that, please be in touch, because we're losing space for all these beautiful varieties that I was sharing with you about, a space for them to live, just like people are losing space to live.
So the space in Battir is what
this is
the town you're talking about?
Jala that we're trying to
okay.
turn into a public trust, hopefully, and a natural conservancy.
And so, can people find that at a website in particular?
No, they can contact me, and I will be more than happy to discuss further. We're still in nascent stage, but if you want to be part of making history, please call me. And so, speaking of space and land, I'll just close by talking about where I am. I am in Chumash land, north of 2 hours north of Los Angeles, in a small town in the Ojai Valley, and I have been here for a couple of months since this, you know, this, I guess, recently, yeah. And so I have been also kind of living with and contemplating and feeling the pain of being somewhere also that has also been so wounded and is also so beautiful, as you can see.
So this is the Pacific Coast that we're looking at.
This is the Pacific Coast, which is another dear place to my heart. And so I am obviously trying to understand and think about what it means to be of people who are being eradicated. And the Chumash people are still here, but of course, just like Palestinians, they're talked about as if they don't exist. And so it's, I just want to acknowledge that and just say how important it is to always be aware of kind of our footsteps in the world and what they mean. And you know, as you know, you're creating hikes and trails to meet people. When we walk, how can we walk with more humility and more respect to everything around us, and to understand what's around us? So I walk here in California, my home state that I love very much. But I often find this khubeze, which here is considered a weed. You know, like here in this particular picture, I was collecting them very fast because the other people who were mowing the grass, they were mowing it because it's weeds. But for me, it's food, and this is something that grows in Palestine in abundance and wild. So I remember going, I was actually, my friend was with me, his name is Sami, and we found it, and I called my mom, I'm like, I found khubeze, which is, by the way, malva or mallow. And she said, please send us some in the mail. My parents live in North Carolina. So we did, and then my friend Sammy's parents called, we are so jealous, they're in Arizona, please send us, what is this you send us, we need. So we went and made these packages to send of this weed, this wild thing that people here consider as weed. But this process of just foraging, which is something that people did before even the invention of agriculture, is such a beautiful exercise, experience. And obviously you eat, things from your surroundings, but this very, very basic activity has become quite literally dangerous for us. Here's Hassan.
In the middle.
And literally, your life is threatened in Palestine, often under, the name of security, often, and other colonial practices, where this man, for example, to the left, I think the picture speaks for itself. He's just foraging for khubeze, the very leaf that others consider also weeds. And because these are settlers who came to Palestine and they don't understand the terrain, for them also khubeze is a weed. Except now, obviously, it's become more popular in the world, especially in the Western world, to talk about foraging. It's now a hipster activity, so everybody wants to forage. But the truth is, those of us who have had the relationship with land all our lives, and we know these plants, we are deprived of actually having access to our lands. So when we talk about the indigenous people of the Americas and how they were severed from their lands, it was also done under the name of conservation and other violent means to sever people from their food source. And actually, just recently, I heard about 5 boys who were arrested brutally in Palestine in the South Hebron Hills because they were foraging for akub, gondilia, which is a plant we also eat. So what does it mean in a world where we're always talking about nature? You go to the stores here, everybody's like, oh, this is organic, this is forage, this is, okay, wonderful, but how does that actually translate in a world where people who have known this, who are passing down this knowledge, are being killed and eradicated and severed from their lands? So I like to bring this up because it's a very important question when we talk about nature. In a global movement where we want to talk about nature, we're failing to talk about justice, and also how this distribution, again, how are we really on the same boat or not? And so I want to share that this morning I went foraging for you guys, and I found more khubeze, and I wanted to actually hopefully cook it for you, but I think I'm by myself with
Tell people though, Vivien, because we have a section, a little film at the Abraham Path Initiative YouTube where a guide is talking about harvesting and how you cook khubeze. Why don't you tell everybody how to cook khubeze?
Yeah, well, khubeze is very simple, and again, as people of the land, it's the land is our kitchen and is our mother in a lot of ways that cooks for us, because khubeze, as you can see, is easily available everywhere. So you pick it, and actually onion, which is the other ingredient, onion is also native of the area in Palestine and all of that. We have wild onions, so probably people in the past have eaten wild onions. And I love that the pharaohs of Egypt considered onions a divine vegetable because it represented the center of the world and the universe, which makes sense to me since onion is my favorite vegetable. And the other item, which here I have in this lovely bottle, zaytun olive oil from Palestine, which is also another, so basically these are the three ingredients: the olive oil, which is from the olive trees, which are also in abundance, the khubeze from the land, and the onion. And you just chop up the onion, saute it with olive oil, chop up the khubeze, add a little bit of salt, and then you leave it to simmer, and there you go. You have khubeze. It's really so simple. You can squeeze some lemon on top and eat it.
There you have it.
Yeah.
Vivien, let me ask you in our last few minutes before we have Diane come on again, and I'd like to go through just a couple of the questions here quickly that have come. One is, do you have a catalog of seeds? Is there a place people can look for a catalog?
Well, not a catalog yet, but we are developing our seed collection as more and more people have wanted to hear some. So we have right now a beautiful collaboration with the Hudson Valley Seed Library, who have been growing our yaqtin, which is a gourd. It's a pumpkin, basically, a green pumpkin. And they've been growing it in the Hudson Valley. And we developed this art packet that you can get on the Hudson Valley Seed Company website. And this is a beautiful pumpkin that grows and climbs and produces beautiful flowers. But also our seeds are available on an art platform called Disarming Design. They're in Belgium, but they do sell our seeds. And we hope that soon we will be able to sell our seeds ourselves, but it's been, again, a process in the making.
Of course. Do you have a number, how many varieties of seeds you have?
Our seed collection is constantly changing in number. I mean, there are some core seeds that are always there, but as I know Hassan's online, he'd love to hear this. I'm very unorganized, and so I'm very random with the seeds I have. I'm trying to do better. But there are core ones, and a lot of the seeds, sometimes some farmers come and take, and they're supposed to bring back the next year and they don't. It's okay. It's just that it makes it that some of the seeds are not always in stock, but we probably have around 50 that are always coming in and out.
All right. And do you do flowers at all?
Yes, thank you for asking this, because flowers are our new endeavor, and I am very much in love with flowers. And so in this project that I was referring to, what we're trying to do is create a flower and vegetable farm so that our flowers can subsidize making baskets of vegetables available to people for free. So, and that's something we've been sort of doing since the lockdown, just sharing with folks, obviously not on a very huge scale with the resources we have right now, but we're hoping to grow this. But one of the main flowers that we've been growing is what I call the Sabella zinnia, and it's because these seeds were given to me by my longtime friend and mentor, John Sabella, and he gave me these zinnias that he grew in, they're Peruvian zinnias, but he grew them in North Carolina. And I've been growing them in Palestine for the last 5 years. So they're, in a way, they're becoming an heirloom. And farmers love them. They've also done really well in Palestine. The bees and the birds love them. So they've been helping not just beautify the farm, but also create more biodiversity and bring more birds. And also, bring some joy to our hearts. When it's not You know, a lot of people think, oh, you just need food. You don't need just food to survive. You really need beauty also. And so these zinnias bring so much beauty and joy, I think, to folks who grow them.
Vivien, we're going to bring Diane Moore back on to ask one final question, but as she's coming, would you hold up the Hobezi again and give the English name for it? We've got a lot of interest among our
yeah,
audience
so
here.
It wilted already, even though I went early this morning, but it wilts pretty quickly. So it's
it almost looks like a geranium leaf.
Sorry?
It almost looks like a geranium leaf.
It does, it does. And you know, they're all kind of like the family of also, believe it or not, okra. These are like the same, they're related, cotton related. It, you know, a lot of times you see it also in people's, you know, in the cracks, they come out, they're really resilient, you know, and they don't care how poor the soil is, they will grow. And I often find myself in people's driveways, you know, where their gates open and close. And they're wondering, what is this crazy woman picking, weeding our gate tracks? But because they grow and they're very abundant like that. But I want to also share that there is, I mean, for me, I got my education really in the hills and mountains and in the terraces. And one of the things that the Hobezi produces when it starts to get older is, I don't know if this is clear, this is what becomes the seed later, but we call it, when we're kids, we eat it. I can eat it now, it's really good. We call it ka'k al-adra, which means Mary's cake, like as in Mother Mary. And it's something when we're kids, you know, you're out playing in the field, and this is, we learn through eating, but then we eat this as a snack when we are playing outside. Obviously, fewer kids get to do this now, so, but I did this. The benefit of being in my 40s, I lived that.
Right, the benefit of an invasive species in this case.
Right.
Yeah, well, they're invasive. Actually, they're invasive in America, but they're not invasive in the Mediterranean.
Right, right.
Right.
Diane, will you offer a final question here?
Sure. Just a quick, first of all, I just want to do a show and tell. I actually was able to get one of the seeds packets, and so grateful to have it. I just also wanted to say thank you, Vivien, before I share one of the participants' last questions. I'm so struck by how you began when you spoke about how you're trained as an anthropologist, and yet you feel like all of us, you said a really powerful comment, that we're all trained in the field of grief. And I found that so powerful because I think grief of all kinds, grief from the kind of neoliberal framing that we live with, and grief from oppression, grief from destruction, and grief from alienation. And yet in your whole life, you have made choices to find rejuvenation in the earth. And that's what you share, your capacity for reimagining, for imagination to break out of those cycles of grief, I think is an inspiration for all of us. So thank you so much for your work and for your words today. We're going to close with a question that Judith Brackett asked early on, one of our participants. She said, how might I or we support, participate, and promote the work of the Palestine Heritage Seed Library to spread awareness of this important work? So if you could maybe close with how we can support you in the work you're doing, that would be wonderful.
Thank you so much for this kind question. Well, there are many ways people can support. Obviously, people can first of all support by planting seeds themselves, and also sharing food with other people. For me, that would be a way to support all of us. Also support by learning more and sharing more stories about Palestine, but also about all, you know, people of the land and what it means to be people of the land. And finally, of course, people can support, hopefully one day when we can travel again, by visiting And people can also support by, if they want to make financial contributions. We have a fiscal sponsor in the United States, which is the Experimental Farm Network in New Jersey. And if people want to support through them, they will just have to tell them that this is going to the Palestine Heirloom Seed Library.
Restricted funding for the Palestine Heirloom Seed Library.
If people want to support our up and coming project to literally buy land, which is the most important thing that we must do, because we talk a lot about liberation, but if we have no control over any land, we really, all our work, we're constantly having to move. And if you know anything about agriculture, this is really bad. So we want to create this ecological site that is a safe haven for birds, for humans, for trees. And I am like asking folks who want to be partners in making it happen, and if they want to make a contribution, please contact me, and we can, of course, it's also tax deductible.
Thank you so much, Vivien. Thank you, Diane, for joining us. Thanks to the school, the Harvard Divinity School, and all of its various elements, all of the seeds that go into creating what you do there at Harvard. Abraham Path Initiative is so pleased to be able to share this opportunity with you and share this opportunity with all of you to spend time with Vivien Sansour. I wish we had more time, Vivien, but people have to go and do their other things. We aren't living the slow life yet. Although I think that's one of the
aware of that myself.
Yeah, one of the sort of tiny little silver linings of COVID. In some ways, we're slowing down, but in some ways, I think we're actually speeding up. You know.
Well, thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody who joined and listened and took time to listen. So
tell us a little bit about the closing video you're going to show. We have a 2.5-minute closing video that's a piece of art of Vivien's, and we will send you out with that. Please join us again on April 15th. Get your taxes done early, and meet us on the Abraham Path for a course in negotiation.
I'll just quickly share that this video is something that we created also as a reflection. This year we wanted to create a rain harvesting cistern because we often have a lack of water, as you all know. And so in the process of digging for this cistern, we found these beautiful geodes, which showed that basically this soil is so ancient. It's before even the human species existed. So, you know, we were all ocean. So it made me think a lot about what it means when we talk about nationalism and ideas of allegiance to nationalism, and how ridiculous it is when you actually get to understand that we're all aquatic beings at some point, and that our aquatic ancestors have a message for us. So this was a film I made with my friend Samar Hasboun, and it was made for Storefront TV Gallery in New York City. So it's about maintenance and how we take care of ourselves.
A few more months from now, the rain will come. This cistern will fill up. The plants will drink, we will drink, and I will baptize my skin in its very waters. And we will survive the way we have before. Another summer, another unjust war, another cruel reality. You see, 100 million years ago, we were ocean. And 100 million years later, we are fighting not to become a desert. 100 million tries and 100 million defiant acts, 100 million seeds and 100 million plants and 100 million trees, and 100 million of us, and we will survive.